there is the pick-me that I know we all hate. But this video is not about them, at least not entirely. This video is about another type of pick-me that I feel doesn't get addressed enough because of the side of the spectrum that they represent, and that is the anti-pick-me, or in other words, the don't pick me. Both are male-centered in their own twisted way. Both are misogynistic in their own twisted way, and both are very harmful to women in their own twisted way because they both further perpetuate exactly what the patriarchy is trying to convey, and that is that women only exist for men. Let me explain. Good whatever time of the day it is for you, everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is Venus Unfiltered, where I talk about typical patriarchal things that piss me off on a day-to-day basis because I have nobody else to talk to about this, and so I decided I'm going to make a channel about it instead. In today's video, I wanted to talk about how a lot of women who claim to be anti-patriarchy still continue to reinforce the very same message that the patriarchy is trying to convey. A lot of women tend to claim they're anti-patriarchy while still continuing to reinforce patriarchal narratives. Except in this case, the don't pick me's don't hate women, they hate femininity, which is more, I guess, common in women. So first, I wanted to talk about empowerment and how I feel like a lot of women tend to feel as though there was only one way to feel empowered in a patriarchal system. But in reality, there actually isn't one way. There isn't one way to feel empowered, right? What matters is the why, but I'll get into that in a second, right? There are two ways to rebel against the patriarchy, and in this case I'm gonna stick with like the whole sexy and the feminine narrative and stuff because that seems like what this mainly surrounds. But the first way to rebel against the patriarchy, to be anti-patriarchy, is if you still choose to be sexy despite what the patriarchy expects of you. Like, we all know that the patriarchy expects women to be sexy and revealing, especially if you are especially if you're like a pop star or a celebrity or an actress. They expect you to wear revealing clothes because that gets most of the views and stuff like that, right? But a way to rebel against the patriarchy is when you choose sexy and you make it your own meaning. You give it your own meaning and make it your own instead of centering it around the men, right? So you wear a sexy outfit, not with the intentions of getting male validation, you're wearing it for yourself, right? The other way to rebel against the patriarchy is if you reject sexiness, right? Instead, you would choose to be a little more covered up, or you wear something that's more outgoing, very expressive, that's really out there, that's really like eye-catching in like an anti-patriarchy way, right? Because in both can be very empowering to women in general. So like if you are an up-and-coming pop star and you have people in your ear saying, hey, so you should probably wear something sexy or maybe add a lot of sexual innuendos into your songs, you know, stuff like that. So do something eye-catching so we can get all the views and stuff like that. And you simply saying, no, I'd rather stick to being covered up, is going against the patriarchy. My problem with that is that a lot of women tend to forget about the autonomy part of it. And so what they do is that they cast their judgments on women who don't share that same mindset. And they reduce women down to what the patriarchy, I guess, like how the patriarchy views women. They diminish women down to what the patriarchy views, right? And that does not help. But I feel like what a lot of us need to understand is that choosing yourself in a system that expects you to choose men is empowering. Choosing to do something because you want to is empowering, right? If you choose to dress in a more modest way, then that's fine. That's your choice. If that's what makes you feel more comfortable, then that is okay, right? It becomes a problem when you start shaming other women who don't choose to dress modestly, saying, oh, well, you're wearing all this clothes because you're trying to achieve male validation. That only further reinforces exactly what the patriarchy wants us to think. And if you still have that mindset, you have not fully healed your internalized misogyny. Instead, the only thing that you're doing is rejecting femininity as a whole, still refusing to see women as human beings instead of people, still refusing to see human beings. Instead, you choose to see them as sex objects for the men. Either way, that's what it is, right? Because if your first thought when seeing a hyper feminine woman is that, oh, she's doing it for the men, you have not healed your internalized misogyny. You're still reinforcing patriarchal narratives, and I thought that was against the point. So here's the thing about the patriarchy, okay? The patriarchy doesn't want women to choose themselves, right? Because when women choose themselves, that kind of makes it hard for the patriarchy to continue to uphold itself. And so they want you to make men the answer to everything. They want you to surround your entire identity and your entire life around a man. that's exactly what they want, right? They want men to be the answer to everything. Why are you wearing that? Because it's for the men. Why are you being sexual? Because it's for the men. Why are you wearing all that makeup? Because it's for the men. It's what they prefer. Why are you dressed modestly? Because it's for the men. That's basically what they want, right? And so when they see a woman walking down the street and she's wearing a skimpy little cute outfit, and they're going to automatically assume that she's doing it for them, right? Anyone who still has that mindset is going to look at this woman and automatically assume that because she's wearing revealing clothes, because she's showing her cleavage, and because she's wearing a top that reveals how big her boobs are, because she's wearing something that like hugs her body really nicely, they're going to automatically assume that you are doing it for the male attention. And if you try to tell the men that no, as a matter of fact, you're not doing it for their attention, their validation, you're doing it because you want to, they will swear up and down that you are doing it for them, because men cannot fathom the idea of a woman not centering men, because that's the whole point that the patriarchy is trying to push. The worst thing about this whole like outfit, clothes, fashion thing is that it doesn't matter what you wear. It doesn't matter if you choose to dress modestly, nor does it matter if you choose to dress in a very feminine way or in a sexy way, right? Because no matter what you do, men are still going to find ways to somehow make it about them and sexualize you as a person. It doesn't matter how much you're covered up, they will still sexualize you as a person, and they will still automatically assume that you're doing it for the men. Unfortunately, there isn't really much that we can do about that. The only thing that we can do is change the narrative, right? Because what we wear doesn't matter. What matters is the why, right? Again, like I said, men want the why, the answer to the why, to be the men. Truly being anti-patriarchy is not doing anything for the men and not seeing a feminine woman who's wearing a feminine outfit and automatically assuming that she's doing it for the men, right? So instead, it's, why are you wearing that? Because it makes me feel good, because I like it. Why are you wearing all the makeup? Because I look good. It makes me feel good. Why are you being sexual? Because I'm not being sexual. I'm just expressing myself. Why are you dressing modestly? Because this is what I prefer. I like it like this. Unfortunately, this is something that a lot of men will never be able to fathom, unfortunately. The whole point of going against the patriarchy is not letting men dictate why you're doing what you're doing. The problem is how a lot of women choose to go about it, and that's where we get into the whole pick me and the don't pick me conversation. We all already know what a pick me is, at least I assume that we all know. However, there does seem to be a bit confusion about what a pick me actually is, because there are women who call people pick me's without actually that person being a pick me, right? So I probably will be making a more video explaining the pick me more in detail, but in simple terms, a pick-me is basically somebody who intentionally puts down women in order to achieve male validation by giving into that misogynistic mindset. They have that I'm not like other girls mindset. Basically conform to what they believe the men want, right? And so because of this, they think that they're different. Unfortunately, the don't pick me has that exact same mindset, except it's on the opposite side. The don't pick me also is I'm not like other girls, I'm different type of person, except these type of people reject femininity because they want to prove that they are above male validation. These people still see femininity as something that is for the men, and that's why that is still a problem, because femininity is not just for the men. Femininity is, I feel like, a way to express yourself, whether that's through art or fashion or energy. Don't pick me's intentionally reject feminine women. They intentionally put feminine women down because they believe that femininity is a patriarchal thing, and they believe that they are above male validation. It is perfectly fine to be proud of the fact that you're not doing anything for male validation. It becomes a problem when you're using that mindset to put down other women who are being feminine. Pick-me's want the world to know that they're not doing anything for the men, and they do this by being loud about it and putting other women down as if that's going to make anything any better. The only thing that's going to do is make a lot of feminine women feel ashamed of themselves and feel as though they can't be feminine because people are saying that it's patriarchal and they don't want to look like someone who's doing it for the male validation, and that is harmful. Why is this a problem? Why exactly is it a problem to not want to do something for the male validation? Because like I said, centers men. That's why it's still a problem, just not in the way that many people think. It still boils femininity down to something that is intentionally, inherently male-serving. That's why it's still a problem. And so whenever these don't pick me's view femininity, whether that's through like expression, or maybe they're more on the softer side of life, or they really love their beauty, they like looking pretty, they like being really, very sexual and very sensual and stuff, they're going to diminish her down to an object for the male fantasy because that is what they learn. The patriarchy has taught women that femininity is only for the men, right? And in my personal opinion, truly being anti-patriarchy is reclaiming femininity and not making it something that is for the men. It's accepting that femininity isn't inherently for the men, because when you still believe that femininity is for the men, you are still further reinforcing exactly what the patriarchy wants you to reinforce, that women only exist for men. Truly being anti-patriarchy means choosing not to dress in an overly sexual way because that's just not what you prefer. However, you also don't put other women down who do choose to be sexy, right? It's like, I don't want to wear revealing clothes, however, I respect your decision to wear revealing clothes because as women, we have that choice. Now, I understand like why a lot of women do see this as a problem, and I will also be making a video more about that side of things, but this specifically is about autonomy and women, so I will be making a video about that stuff, right? But being anti-patriarchy basically is choosing not to do something, but also being willing to see women and femininity in a new light and allowing other women to exist freely, whether that's feminine, whether that's masculine woman. It's just saying, it's not what I prefer, but I respect your decision to choose that, as long as you're not harming yourself or trying to reinforce these harmful patriarchal propaganda by still bringing men into this conversation. Like, it's like, and by that I mean like women who intentionally make it very clear and obvious that they are doing everything for male validation. So anti-patriarchy is accepting autonomy in women. So let's be honest, right? There are women out there who do intentionally reinforce patriarchal propaganda, and that's mainly surrounding like the pick-me's, especially the religious pick-me's. They put on this traditional vibe because that's they feel like that's what the men want, and so like that's what's the better part, and then they're unintentionally reinforcing these very harmful stereotypes onto women, and that's why it's harmful. But not every woman chooses to be feminine for the sake of further perpetuating patriarchal propaganda. As women, it is important for us to rehumanize women because the patriarchy has dehumanized women for the longest time. And being anti-patriarchy is also remembering and reminding people that women are human too. Women deserve choice, women deserve respect, and it's important to educate people as to why certain things are a problem and educate why we should allow other women to exist, right? And the people who want to listen, they will listen. The people who don't want to listen are not going to listen. And unfortunately, there's not much that we can do about that, but there are people out there who are going to listen to what you said and they are going to take it to heart. And I feel like that's really all that matters. It's more about, instead of like quickly jumping to judgment, it's very important to educate women, especially those who want to listen, as to why certain things is a problem. Like, for example, it's okay to explain why femininity is like considered harmful, because femininity is, in patriarchal terms, is considered like soft and submissive, and it's like giving into submission is being subservient. That's one of the reasons why a lot of women tend to reject femininity, because the patriarchy has diminished, boiled femininity down to nothing more than a submissive, subservient woman who bends to her knees and gives the man whatever he wants while she basically gets nothing in return. So it is important to educate women on this topic, but it also is important to let women know, hey, you are allowed to wear makeup, you are allowed to dress feminine, you are allowed to dress in a more sexier way. Just know that you don't have to do it in order to get male validation. You don't have to do it because you're being forced to. You're doing it because you want to. That is it. That is all I have for the video. It's very short. I hope it made some kind of sense. I guess I will see you in the next video.